presentation, we'll be discussing the federal policy issue of student debt. Before we begin, we need to define student debt as a federal policy issue. So for the purpose of this presentation, student debt refers to the money students borrow, generally through federal loans, to pay for college. As a federal policy issue, it involves the government's role in making higher education affordable and managing how loans are given, repaid, or even forgiven.
The total debt for students is $1.814 trillion, with the majority being federal student loans. Federal loans total $1.661 trillion. The average student borrows about $40,000, with $32,000 being the average for just a bachelor's degree.
Here is a graph representing national student loan debt since 2006. As you can see, it has been significantly increasing since being recorded. The only outlier we have is in 2023, when interest rates for student loans were paused by the Biden administration. This graph shows how pressing the student loan debt crisis is as more and more Americans take on this burden.
The first thing to know about paying off student loans is to understand the two main types of loan, private and federal. Private student loans are owned by third-party lenders who do not belong to the government or the universities, meaning that when there are changes to policy and forgiveness programs, it has no effect on the amount students owe. Federal student loans, on the other hand, are managed by the government, and there are two main types, subsidized and unsubsidized. Subsidized student loans are for undergrad students who qualify for financial aid. The interest is covered by the U.S. Department of Education, normally while you are in school and possibly for a short time after graduating. Unsubsidized loans are for both undergrad and grad students who have no financial need requirements. You have to pay all the interest from the start on this type of loan. All private loans are unsubsidized and you accrue interest from the start. Refinancing allows students to combine multiple existing loans, private or federal, into one big private loan. This often allows students to have a lower interest rate, but it is not guaranteed. When students refinance federal loans, they lose the benefits that the government can provide, including deferred interest, federal loan forgiveness, and income-driven repayment or IDR plans. There are limits on federal borrowing, with harsher restrictions placed on undergraduate funding than graduate. Graduate education costs more, so there is more money available. However, a smaller percentage of graduate students actually need to borrow loans than undergraduate students. RDR plans allow students a plan to pay off their loans based on their discretionary income and the size of their household over a period of time. Sometimes, if there's money left on the loans after that period of time, it can be forgiven. There are also loan simulators that can show students different options and compare.
In addressing the student debt crisis, policy change is essential. So let's start with two major policy recommendations to address student debt: expanding grant aid and reforming loan interest rates. First, we should strengthen federal grant aid, especially by doubling the Pell Grant and tying it to inflation. Over the years, Pell Grants have covered a smaller share of college costs, forcing many students to borrow more. By boosting grant aid and encouraging states to restore funding for public colleges, we can reduce the need for loans altogether, particularly for low and middle income students. Second, we need to reform interest rates on federal loans. Students currently pay much higher rates than what the government pays to borrow money itself. Aligning student loan interest with federal borrowing costs, ending compounding interest, and allowing refinancing at lower rates would keep debt from ballooning over time. Together, these changes would make repayment fairer and reduce lifetime financial burdens. The next set of recommendations focuses on repayment reform and institutional accountability. We can simplify the system by consolidating all income-driven repayment plans into one, with automatic enrollment and payments capped at 5 to 10% of discretionary income. After 15 to 20 years of consistent payments, remaining balances should be forgiven. Expanding public service loan forgiveness to include more fields like education, healthcare, and nonprofit work would reward community service and reduce defaults. At the same time, colleges must share responsibility. Institutions that accept federal aid should report student outcomes, such as employment rates and loan repayment success. Schools with persistently high default rates or poor outcomes should face penalties or lose eligibility for federal funding. This ensures accountability and helps protect students from predatory programs. Finally, we can reduce borrowing by creating more affordable and flexible learning pathways. This includes expanding opportunities for high school students to earn college credit tuition-free and promoting competency-based education, where students earn credits for what they know, not just how long they sit in class. Strengthening transfer agreements between colleges would also prevent students from losing credits when they change schools, saving both time and money. We should also expand federal and state work-study programs and encourage employer partnerships that help cover tuition costs. These strategies not only reduce reliance on loans, but also connect students to the workforce faster. Altogether, these recommendations create a more equitable, affordable, and sustainable higher education system, one that invests in students rather than indebting them.
For our first organization, we have the Student Debt Crisis Center, or SDCC. It's a nonprofit with over 2 million supporters across the country dedicated to ending the student debt crisis by amplifying borrower voices. Their mission is to help people navigate the confusing loan repayment system while also pushing for major reform in how higher education is financed. For more than a decade, the SDCC has focused on advocacy, education, and outreach through programs like their Ambassador Initiative, Free the Degree campaign, and student loan workshops. These help borrowers save money and access key resources. Their work has led to real policy wins, like stopping loan interest rate hikes, expanding protection for borrowers, and supporting debt relief for victims of for-profit colleges. Overall, SDCC is a driving force behind both awareness and action in tackling student debt crisis. Next, we have Protect Borrowers, an organization that works to hold predatory lenders accountable and protect people from falling into long-term debt traps. Their mission centers on delivering immediate relief to families while also fighting for larger systemic change. They focus on 3 main goals: making sure debt doesn't become a lifelong burden, protecting borrowers from unfair lenders, and addressing how debt disproportionately harms marginalized groups and blocks generational wealth. Protect Borrowers achieves this through litigation, policy advocacy, and partnerships at state and local levels to ensure borrowers' rights are defended. Thanks to their efforts, federal loan payments were suspended for 40 million borrowers, nearly $190 billion in debt was canceled, and predatory lenders were pushed out of the student loan market. To compare, their work focuses on litigation and policy work, as the SDCC focuses more on outreach and education.